I see you. Good morning. Okay. All right. Your buddy Mordechai's got more teeth problems. All right. What? Michael Burr. Okay. All right. Okay. He helps you give the share you. Yeah. You know how we were learning about the fact that there was the Tana, and sometimes they would have the Tana would announce beforehand, and then the Amora would continue with give the drasha. Okay, and when it was Torah reading, there was the reader, and then there was the Maturgaman. Okay, he's the Maturgaman. Yeah. Okay.
But the Maturgaman is supposed to explain what the reader said, not argue with them.
Dai Hakima Baramiza, as they say in the Gemara. Right? Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to start on the sponsors, as I hope more of our chavra get on by phone, and others make their way upstairs. Okay. Learning sponsors, a year of learning by Sue and Arnie Gerlich, in memory of Malka Proman and Philip Mann, and Yisrael David ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Beryl ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Yosef Meir ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Henya Rivka Pro Rosna bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, in memory of family murdered in the Holocaust, Harav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. Sharon and Fred Lisker, their family and many friends, in memory of her dear mom, Harriet Friedman, Edelbas Yaakov. Leslie and Gail Kaplan, in memory of their parents, Harry and Marjorie Sedal, Irving and Pearl Kaplan. Friends of Avi Gidler, Avrameir ben Shimon, and Martha Gidler, Sharna bat Yeshaya. Children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of Toby Paris, Sarah Tova bat Yisrael Dov in her memory. Friends of Joe Wolf, Yosef ben Chaim. Charlie Gelfenstein and Sam Levine, in memory of Ramona Levine, Rachel Mata bat Asher. Friends of Nina Moinester, Nechama Asna bat Yitzchak Aaron. Many friends of Stephen Vigder, the Zecher Nishmat Simcha Melech ben Meir Halevi. Friends of Marcy Kurtz, in memory of her great niece, Leah Bracha. We have a month of learning by Haran and Mel Haller, in memory of her mother, Malka Rachel Bas Yehuda Leib, by B. Pizer, in memory of her husband, Avrav Yisrael Chaim ben David, by Tova and Leo Zimmer, in memory of her mother, Henya Bat Rav Beryl, and her father, Aaron ben Yosef Mordechai, by Perry and Jill Meltzer, in memory of his mother, Malka Bas Baruch, and his sister, Golda Leah Bas David Halevi, by Stanley Presser, in memory of his mother-in-law, Golda Bas Avram. Okay, all right. His mother, Leah Bat Rehuda, and his wife, Ruchel Mincha Bat Moshe. We have a week of learning by Marvin Becker, in memory of his father, Yaakov ben Meir, by Judy Iger, in memory of her mother, Bela Bat Anshel Yitzchak, by Barbara Yellendauer, in memory of her husband, Avram ben Yonatzan. Okay, and we did yesterday's, right? Marvin and Shirley had that, right? A day of learning plus Torah fund in memory of his late wife, Ita Bat Avraham, and the other ones from yesterday, right, were Ari and Judy Colon, in memory of their friend Ita Bat Avraham, by Bob and Judy Thaler, in memory of his brother, Avram Yechiel Michal ben David Eliyahu. Okay, and that was the case. And Shemas have an Aliyah, Krank Rafiel Velta Yeshua Shem Matzliah, and the Chol B'nai Israel a good Gaben Shtir. Okay.
Amen.
All right. Okay, we got two guys on. Harvey, what about you? Harvey, whoops. What
Yeah,
happened?
I'm here.
I'm here,
Well,
but I just lost.
now you don't see me. Now you do. Okay. I'm there.
No, all of a sudden I just lost our Zoom connection.
Nope. We see
You
you.
have you. You have you.
We're there.
I know you're there. I hear you, but I don't see you. I don't see anybody because all right. Otherwise, you wouldn't see me. Okay, not that that's so terrible. Okay, anyway. Okay. On the top of Kaf Chet Amud Aleph is where is today's daf. I know it's a long daf. I just want to go back very briefly to the bottom of the previous Amud. Okay. Okay, remember we're seeing that a series of questions being asked to a variety of Chazal, okay, on what was the basis that you merited a long life? And they were giving various statements and explanations what merited them this long length of life and things like that. Okay, so at the very bottom of the page, okay, the last line, right? It says, Shalu Talmidav at Rabbi Freda. So they asked Rabbi Freda the following, B'meh ha'arachta yamim amar lehem. Okay, so that's where, just to pick up, because that's what leads over to the new Amud. Miyamai lo kadamti adam lebeit hamidrash. Okay, throughout my life, I never allowed someone else to get to the base midrash before me. Okay, now today's daf. All right, Kafchet. What else did he do? Okay, or didn't do? Velo berachti lefnei kohen, and I did not lead the Birkat Hamazon, okay, in a place where there was a kohen present, and the Gemara is going to come back and clarify that. Okay. V'lo achalti mebehema shelo hurmu matanoteha. And I never ate from an animal, okay, before the situation was that the priestly portions, okay, the jaw, the maw, and the other one, okay, were distributed. Da Amar Rabbi Yitzchak Amar Rabbi Yochanan, as said by Rabbi Yitzchak in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Asur le'echol mibehema shelo hurmu matanoteha, that it's forbidden to eat from an animal whose priestly portions had not been distributed. Okay. Va'amar Rabbi Yitzchak, and Rabbi Yitzchak then comments, Ha'okol ha'ochel mibehema shelo hurmu matanoteha ki'ilu ochel tvalim. Okay, that one who eats, says Rabbi Yitzchak, from portions, any part of an animal where the priestly portions were not previously taken and distributed, okay, it's like eating tevel. Remember, tevel is untithed produce, okay, whatsoever, okay, right, and that is, yes, Alan.
Do you have any idea how old these men were when they passed away?
We
What was
don't.
considered old age?
We don't. Good question, particularly when we come to a later piece in the Gemara, when there's a discussion between Rebbe and one of his senior colleagues. Okay.
I suspect that they may have been like 40 or 50 years old, and not 80 or 90.
I would have guessed probably late 60s, 70s would have been considered advanced age, okay? But I'm just guessing. I haven't seen any, okay? So what happens? Velit hilchata kavate. Okay, however, the Gemara then gives us a clear statement that the law is not like Rabbi Yitzchak in this case. Okay. Next statement that he said, "V'lo berachti lefnei kohen." Okay, in other words, that he did not recite Birkat Hamazon before the Kohen. Why is this interesting? Lamemra, the Ma'iliuta, he. Does that mean that it's a virtuous thing to say that he always allowed the Kohen to bench before him? Okay. Apparently, there was a minhag at the time of Chazal that if you had both a Kohen and a Talmid Chacham at the meal, there really was a question as who should lead benching, who should be mechabed in doing that. So the Gemara goes on and tells us the following: Vaha Amar Rabbi Yochanan, but didn't Rabbi Yochanan say, Kol Talmid Chacham shemevarech lefanav afilu kohen gadol am haaretz oto Talmid Chacham chayav mita. Okay, that any kohen, that the Talmid Chacham that allowed even the kohen gadol to bench before him. Okay, it's problematic. Right, a Kohen Gadol who was in Am Haaretz, okay, it's a problem, okay? The implication being that if the Kohen Gadol or the Kohen was also a Talmid Chacham, it's one thing. Then they were sort of equal status, okay? All right? Well, then you might, well, that's what the Gemara is going to come to. All right?
Once he becomes an Amoris, then he's not a
Shenamar, kol misanai ahavu movet. Right? Although, right? Al tikra misanai, ela masniye. Those who hate me. Right? Because what happens? Says the Gemara, ki ka'amar ihu b'shavi. This was applied when it was said that they were equal. In other words, if you had a Kohen who was a Talmid Chacham, and you also had a Talmid Chacham present at the meal, then it's one thing to allow the Kohen to bench first, okay? But if you had a Kohen who is not a Talmid Chacham, then the implication seems to be that the Talmid Chacham should lead the benching, which is interesting because remember we saw in our previous discussion earlier of the order of the readers, right? We saw the discussion that it said that if there was a Talmid Chacham there, he should get the first aliyah before a Kohen. Okay? So in other words, apparently that was the case. However, the Gemara tells us, okay, that in this case, when they're equal, okay, he did not, in that case, if they were equal, he still allowed the Kohen Gadol to bench first. Okay. Okay, going on. Another example. Shalu Talmidav at Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakaneh. So they asked the students, asked their Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakaneh, Kabama ha'arachta yamim. Again, what was the basis in which you had such a lengthy life? Amar lehem. So he tells them his approach. Miyamai lo nichbadati bekalon chaveri. Throughout my life, I never allowed myself to be honored based on the downfall or the disparaging of a colleague. Velo alta al mitati klalot chaverai. And I never went onto my bed with the curses of my colleagues. In other words, the Gemara is going to explain that in more detail shortly. Okay, Vatran b'mamoni hayiti, and I was open-handed with my money. In other words, either I was about tzedakah, something like that. Okay, so going back, explaining each of his statements. The first, lo nichbadati b'kalon chaverai. I didn't allow myself to be honored based on the disparagement of a colleague. Kiha de Rav Huna, like that of Rav Huna, Dari Mara Akatfe, who was carrying a hoe on his shoulder. Ata Rav Chana bar Chanilai, Vakad Dari Mine. along came Rav Chana Bar Chanilai, let's assume a younger colleague or a tzurba, a student of Rav Huna, and he asked Rav Huna, so to speak, let me carry the hoe. Okay, Amar le, he said to him, Iragilt dedarit b'ma'atayich. If you are used to carrying it in your town, dari, then carry. Ve'ilo, and if not, okay, it yakure ana beziluta didach lo nechali. Okay, so his response then is, and if not, then okay, I do not want to be honored by disparaging you, making you, so to speak, carry it. Okay, that I'm not comfortable with that, he's saying. So given that example, right, okay, he is following that example. Second example, second case, second statement. V'lo alta al mitati klalat kaverai, and I didn't go up onto my bed with the curses of my colleagues. Ki ha da'amar Marzutra, like that which was said by Marzutra. Ki hava salik leporia, that when he would climb on to bed, Amar, he would say, Shari le lechol man detza'aran. Okay, I permit, in other words, basically, I absolve all those colleagues who may have given me any tsaras, any arguments, any difficulty. Okay. Right. And the third case, vavatran b'mamoni hayiti, and that I was open-handed with my funds, da'amar mar, as was said by the master, Iyov v'vatran b'mamone hav, that Job was open-handed with his funds. Shahaya maniach pruta lechenvani mimamone, that he used to leave an extra coin, an extra pruta, almost like a tip for the storekeeper from his own money. Okay? He would overpay, in other words, a slight amount that way. Okay, now another example. Sha'al Rabbi Akiva at Rabbi Nechunya Hagadol. Okay, Rabbi Akiva asked Rabbi Nechunya Hagadol, okay, and what did he ask him? The same question. Amar lo b'meh ha'arachta yamin. What was the basis of your extended length of life? What happened then, however, atu gav zeh, along came Rabbi Nechunya's attendants, v'kamachule, and they started beating up on Rabbi Akiva. Now we have to assume that this was when Rabbi Akiva was more of a student than the authority that he became. All right. Salik, he went, he left. Yativ Aresha de Dikla. He went and he climbed up on the top of a palm tree to get away from them. Right? All right. Amarle. Okay. And he said to him, Rebbe, calling down to Rabbi Nechunya Hagadol, Im nomar keves, if we say a pasuk, if we're citing a pasuk, all right? And let me just grab the Chumash real quick. Okay. Right. So I want to read the pasuk. Okay. Based on my notes. I assume Art Scroll gives the whole pasuk in its notes. Okay. So I didn't have access to Art Scroll, but I had access to what the note was that gave the pasuk 28:4, right? Bamidbar 28:4. 28:4. Okay, so the pasuk says, "Et hakeves echad tasu baboker, veit hakeves hasheni ta'aseh bein ha'arba'im.
Was a hay by the shade, but not by the.
Right, so that could be by the second reference to kevis, it has hasheni et kevis echad, but it doesn't say et kevis ha'echad, which we would grammatically normally think that was the case. Okay?
Since the second has to be.
All right. So, since he asked that kind of a shaila, all right, it would appear that Rabbi Nechunya realized, he wasn't asking the question to be a fresh guy, all right, but he was. It was a lamdanisha question. Okay, so what happens? Amarlo surba mi rabbanan. He said then to the attendants, all right, he's a student, right? Shavkuhu, leave him alone. Okay, that's the case. Amarle, and then he explained the pasuk. When it says echad instead of ha-echad, miyuchad shebe'adro. It means he's unique or special among the flock. In other words, it has to be a particular best quality of animal among the flock. That's how he understood it. Okay? Amarle. So he said them. Okay, another example. Miyamai lo kebalti matanot. Throughout my life, I never. Yeah. Okay. Right. Throughout my life, I never accepted gifts. He says, "V'lo amadati al midotai," and I never. I'm going to phrase it this way: I never demanded a measure of retribution. Okay, that was, and you'll see why we're going to come back to this. V'vatran b'mamoni hayiti, and I also was open-handed with my money. Explanations: Lo kibalti matanot, I never took gifts. Ki had the Rabbi Elazar, like that of Rabbi Elazar. Ki havu mishadre le matanot mi bein nesiyah, lo hava shakil. That when they sent him gifts from the house of the Nasi, he didn't receive them. Ki hava mizamne le, and when they used to invite him, lo hava azil, he wouldn't go, right? Amar laho, and Rabbi Elazar then responded to them, lo necha lechu de echia, isn't it not enough for you that I'm alive? Okay, as it's written, soneh matanot yichyeh, the one who despises or doesn't refuses gifts will live. Further story, Rabbi Zera, kihavu mishadre lemi beinasiya. With regards to Rabbi Zera, when they would send him gifts from the house of the Nasi, lo hava shakil, he wouldn't accept them. Kihava zimane le, when they would invite him, azil, he would go. Amar, and he would say, it yaikuri the be. Okay, they are honored by having me in their presence. Okay, so in other words, I don't know if I would say it was a statement of how important he was, but it reminded me at least of the practice that if somebody is in a later stage of avelus, and they are sent an invitation to an important fundraising dinner, and their presence might bring other people to attend or to give better donations, then that's an opportunity for a kula in halachic determination as to whether to allow that person to go to the fundraising dinner.
So that he's not being honored by going, it's rather they are being honored by having him.
By having him, right. Exactly. Velo amadati al midotai. Now here's an interesting, I felt. And I wasn't demanding of a measure of retribution. Da'amar Rava, as Rava says, kol hama'avir al midotav, ma'avirin mimenu al kol psha'av. Whoever is forgoing, I'm going to say, on his demand for retribution, okay, then his sins are forgiven, okay, as well. Shenamar no se avon v'over al pesha. Lami no se avon, for whom is there forgiveness of sin? Lami she'over al pesha, to the one who forgoes on sins. In other words, sins done to him. If he's not demanding of it, then his sins will be forgiven as well. Huh?
You say this on Yom Kippur, you should be mindful, everybody. That's why Hashem should be mindful.
Mochel on you, exactly. Sha'al Rebbe. Now, here's the case, Alan, that I pointed out. Rebbe is asking clearly a senior colleague. Again, I don't know if Art Scroll does it, but in the Art Scroll book that comes out as an introduction that came out within the last couple of years, introduction, okay, to the Talmud, they have a section on who all of the Chachamim are, their background, what generation. Koren does that as notes on the page. Need us just briefly to say that this is a conversation between Rebbe and Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha, and it's clear that Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha is in age senior to Rebbe. Okay? Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha actually was probably last generation of Tanaim over a transition to first generation of Moraim. Okay? So, this conversation, Sha'al Rebbe at Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha, v'meher achta yamin. Okay, so Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha responds, right? Amarle, katzta b'chaya, you want to shorten my life? Okay, in other words, why do you even ask the question? Amarlo, he said to him, Rebbe, Torahi v'lil mod ani tzarich. Okay, this is an aspect that I want to learn. By what merits, in a sense, were you eligible to merit the long life? Amarle, he said to him. So this is now Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha responding to Rebbe. Miyamai lo nistakalti b'demut adam rasha. I never looked at the image of a evil person. The Amar Rabbi Yochanan, as was said by Rabbi Yochanan, and we assume this is Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai that he's citing. Okay, Asur la Adam lehistakel b'tselem demut Adam rasha. It is forbidden for a person to gaze upon the image of a wicked person. Shene Amar, as it says, Lulei Pnei Yehoshaphat Melech Yehuda Ani Noseh et Abit Alecha Ve'im Ereka. Okay, so in other words, Yehoshaphat was not one of the better kings. Rabbi Elazar Omer, he says, Einav Kahot. Says what happened? He says his eyes dimmed. Shene Amar, as it says, Vayhi ki zaken Yitzchak v'tichena einav mirot. Isaac became elderly and his eyes began to dim. Mishum de istakel be'esav harasha, because he looked upon Esav the wicked. V'ha garmale, asks the Gemara, and this is what caused his eyes becoming dim. V'ha amar Rabbi Yitzchak, but did not Rabbi Yitzchak say the following? Le'olam al tehi klalat hedyat kala be'einecha, that it should never be that the curse of a common person would be light, okay, in your opinion, okay, in this case, be'einecha, in your eyes. Sheharei Avimelech kilel et Sarah, for what happened? Avimelech cursed Sarah, right? V'nitkayem bizarah, and it was fulfilled in her progeny. Shene Amar, as it says, Hinehu lach ksut einayim, because it says there it was like a covering of the eyes. Al tikre ksut ela kisiyat einayim. Don't call it a total removal, okay, a total covering of the eyes, but simply some kind of covering of the eyes. And then the Gemara responds, Havaha garmale. Both this and this caused him to become blind. Okay, both the implication of the curse of Avimelech, as well as looking at Esav Harasha. Yeah.
I always thought it was Abraham.
Avram's
Was he was trying to kill him? Yeah.
It's his thing. It's his thing.
into whose eyes?
That's another.
Okay, that's another midrash. Okay,
We're also talking about that.
okay. The implication would be that when you have multiple midrashim on the same issue, okay, they're different masoras, different explanations, right? That's all. Okay. It doesn't mean one is right and one is wrong. Okay, right? Rava Amar Mehacha, and Rava said based on a different pasuk, Se'et Panei Rasha Loto, that the carrying, the looking of the face of the wicked is not good. Okay, now what happens? B'sha'at Patirato. Okay, now again we see back and forth. Okay, this conversation between Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha and Rebbe. Before Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha passed away, okay, he says, Amar le Rebbe Barcheni. Rebbe says to Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha, bless me. Amar le, and his response was, Yehi ratzon shetagia lechatzi yamai. May it be that you live up to half my years. So Rebbe's response, Ulakul hulo, all your years not? Okay. Amarla, Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha responds, Habaim acharecha, okay, Bahama yiru. Do you want that those who come after you become nothing but cattle herders? In other words, if Rebbe was to have an extensive, long life, the message Rabbi Yoshua is giving him is that then his sons will never reach any prominence in Torah and in learning and in leadership. But if he dies at a reasonable age, then his sons will ultimately receive prominence and leadership. That's at least was what Koren's explanation was from one of the Mefarshim.
Do we know anything about Rabbi Yeshua's sons? Is it possible that
No.
his sons actually turned out that way?
No.
And then he's saying, look what happened to me.
Okay.
You don't want to happen to you.
Didn't see that. Okay. Avuha bar Ihi. Okay, so now we have two other sages. Avuha bar Ihi, Uminyamin bar Ihi. The two of them, okay, could be brothers. Chad Amar Titili Delo Istakalti Bakuti. Okay, acknowledge, he says, so to speak, me, that I never looked upon a Kuthian, Samaritan. V'chad Amar Titili, acknowledge me. All right, Delo Avde Shootfoot Bahade Kuti. That I never went into a professional business arrangement, a partnership with a kuti. Okay. Furthermore, we now get back to our original question. Sha'alu Tamidav et Rabbi Zera, b'meh arachta yamim. Again, so they asked Rabbi Zera, how did he? All right. Amar lehem miyamai lo hikpadati betoch beiti. Throughout my life, I never got angry with those in my household. V'lo tza'adati b'fnei mi shegadol mimeni. And I never walked in front of somebody who was greater than V'lo hirharti b'mevuot hamatunafot. And I never even meditated and thought ideas, thoughts, lessons of Torah when I might have to walk in filthy alleyways, right? V'lo halachti daled amos below Torah or below tefillin, and I never walked more than daled amos, 4 amos, without Torah or tefillin. Okay, v'lo yashanti bebeit hamidrash, and I never slept in the base midrash. V'lo shinat keva, v'lo shinat arai, not even a long shlof or even a short drimmel. Okay, neither way. V'lo sasti b'tiklat chaverai, and I didn't rejoice at the downfall of any of my colleagues. V'lo karati lechaverai b'chanichato, and I never called a colleague by a derogatory name. V'amrele, and others say b'chachinato, or even by a nickname. Okay? And remember we saw that as a previous example as well. All right, Matnitin, okay? A new Mishnah. Va'odamar Rabbi Yehuda, and further said Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, so now we are going to deal with the example of the topic of what do you do with a synagogue that is now in ruins? Okay, does it maintain any kind of sanctity? Okay, Va'odamar Rabbi Yehuda, Beit HaKnesset, Shecharev, Ein Maspidin B'tocho. A synagogue that has been destroyed or ruined, one doesn't give public eulogies in it. Ve'ein Mafshilin B'tocho Chavelim. And we don't use the empty area for tying ropes, okay? Stretching ropes. Ve'ein Porshim L'tocho Mitzudot. And we don't stretch out, okay, any nets in there to dry. Ve'ein shotchin al gadigo perot. And we don't put the produce and spread it on the roof of the building for the produce to dry, things like that, right? Ve'ein osin oto kapendaria. And we don't use it as a shortcut to go from one place to another. Shnei Amar, Vashimoti et Mikdeshechem. And it says, I destroyed your sanctified places. Kedushatan af kashehein shomamim. Okay, this implies that they have some level of sanctity even when they're destroyed. Okay, alubo asavim. If their grass has grown in the ruins of the synagogue, lo yitlosh. One should not pluck the grass. Why? Mipnei agmat nefesh, in order to remind us of the sadness, to the despair. Gemara, Tana Rabbanan, says the Gemara. The Braita teaches, B'tei knesiot eino hagim bahen kalut rosh. In regards to synagogues, we should not behave with them with frivolity. Ve'eino chlin bahem, and we shouldn't eat in them. Ve'ein shotin bahem.
When they're still, when they're still up, not destroyed.
Well, that's what we're going to clarify, right? That's what the Gemara is going to address.
What about Kiddush or something?
Okay, and we don't drink in them, right? Ve'ein na'otin bahem, says the Braita, and we don't adorn in them. Ve'ein metailin bahem, and we don't just hike around, walk around in them. Ve'ein nichnasin behem b'chama mipnei achama, and we don't enter them on sunny days to get out of the sun. U'be'geshamim mipnei geshamim, and on rainy days to get out of the rain. Right? Ve'ein maspidin bahen hesped shel yachid, and we don't give eulogies in them for a private individual. Right? Aval korin bahem, but we read in them. Right? In other words, we study Torah in them, Vashonin bahem, and we repeat Mishnah in them, Umaspidin bahem hesped shel rabim, and we give public eulogies in them where many people will attend. Okay? Amar Rabbi Yehuda Ematai. When are we talking about? B'yishuvan, when these synagogues are inhabited, when they're in normal use. Okay? Aval b'churbanan, but when they're destroyed, Menichinotan, we leave them aside. Va'olin bahem asavim, and we allow the grass to grow. V'lo yitlosh mipnei agmat nefesh, and we don't pluck the grass so that we emphasize the agmas nefesh, the sorrow associated with their destruction. Asavim, man dechar shemayu, regarding grass, who even mentioned it? Asks the Gemara. No, something is missing in this Braita. Okay, and this is how we have to teach it. And we sweep them. And we sprinkle water on them so the dust doesn't grow, the earth doesn't grow. So that the grass doesn't grow in them. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Ematai, and Rabbi Yehuda said it again, when? B'yishuvan, again, when they're usable, when they're in use, when there are inhabitants there. Aval b'churbanan, but in their destruction, manichin otam la'alot alau, okay? We allow them to grow, alu bahen asavim, and if the grass grows in them, lo yitlosh mipnei agmat nefesh. We don't pluck the grass, again, as a sign of sorrow. Amar Rabbi Asi, says Rabbi Asi, B'tei knasiot shebabavel, al t'nai hein osim. The synagogues in Bavel are built on the condition that allows other uses for them. Okay, and this may be the example that you're looking for. And nevertheless, one should not behave in them in a frivolous manner. Okay, what do we mean might be an inappropriate, a frivolous manner? Cheshbonot. One shouldn't be doing computations in them. Amar Rav Asi, says Rav Asi, Beit HaKnesset, shemichashvin bo cheshbonot, a synagogue, okay, in which it is used as a, I think cheshbonot computations here, workplace.
Yeah, well, article says this, you're talking about business calculation.
Business calculation, right? Milinin bo et hamet. Ultimately, it's going to come to a situation that they will have to use it as a place to store a meis mitzvah, okay, in situations. Milinin sal gadatach. Do you really think they would have to leave over a corpse in such a place? Lo sagi de lav hachi. It's not enough that they do these other things. Ela lisof sheyalinu bo meit mitzvah. No, that ultimately, in other words, it may lead to a point that the attitude will be that and this could happen. Ve'ein mi'utin bahem, but our Braita said one doesn't adorn with them. Amar Rava chachamim u'talmidehem mutarin. The sages and their students are permitted. The Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, Mai Bei Rabbanan. What does it mean when we call it Bei Rabbanan? Beita de Rabbanan, the house of the rabbis. Okay, namely that scholars should feel as comfortable in the Beis Midrash in the synagogue as if they are at home. Ve'ein nichnasin behen b'chama mipnei hachama. And we say one doesn't enter it on sunny days to get out of the sun or rainy days to get out of the rain. Ki had ravina v'rav adabar matana havukaime v'shale she'ilta merava. Like the situation where Ravina and Rav Adabar Matana were standing and asking a shaila of Rava. Ata zilta Demetra. Along came a shower of rain. They went inside the synagogue. Amre Hai de Alina. And they said, the fact that we came inside Lebei Kanishta to the synagogue, Lav Mishum Mitra was not necessarily because of the rain, Ela Mishum de Shamata, Ba'at Siluta, Kiyoma de Astana. But rather, such learning requires the clarity, the clearness of the north wind. In other words, of a day when there's a nice wind blowing and it's a clear day, and we need to be able to have some place where we can focus on the learning. Okay? Amarle Rav Acha Bere de Rava, the Rav Ashi. Okay, furthermore, Iyitz Tarich Le'inish Le'mikre Gavra Mibei Kanishta. So this is sort of a new topic. What happens if you have to call somebody in shul, right? In other words, get them out of shul for some reason. What's the situation? Okay, after you have to go and get somebody, right, or call them out of shul, what do? Mai, Amarle, he says, eat surba mirabanan who, okay, lema hilchata. If the person who has to go in to get somebody, he should go in and while he's in there, recite a halacha. Ve'itana, if it's somebody who only knows Mishnah, right? Who lema matnitin, he should then just recite a Mishnah. Ve'ikarahu, and if he's somebody who's a teacher of only Bible and he only knows Bible, lema psuka, let him say a pasuk, a verse. Ve'ilo, and if not, lema leili yanuka, emeli psukayach. He should therefore say then to a child, tell me the pasuk that you learned today. Okay? Inami, we'll finish up. Right? Nishe purta. Otherwise, he should just stay there a little time, vinikum, and then get up and leave. Okay? Going on. Umaspidin bahen hesped shorabim. And one gives a public eulogy. Okay? Hechidami hesped the rabim. What do we mean when we say a public eulogy? Machve Rav Chista, Kagon Hespeda, the Kai Beit Rav Sheshet. Like the example, he says, okay, pointing to the example of a eulogy where Rav Sheshet was present. Okay, because Rav Sheshet was in attendance at that funeral, many other people came. Okay, another example, Machve Rav Sheshet. Rav Sheshet himself pointed out an example. Okay, Kagon Hespeda, the Kai Be Rav Chista, as an example on the occasion of a eulogy when Rav Chista was present. Rafram Aspade Lechalate Bebe Kanishta. But what about, says the Gemara, that Rafram gave a eulogy for his daughter-in-law in the synagogue? Amar Mishum Yakra Didi Udamita, he said, because of the honor that people have for me and the honor for the deceased, Atu Kule Alma, then many people are going to be coming. Rabbi Zera, Safte Lahahu Mirabanan Bebe Kanishta. Rabbi Zera gave a eulogy for one of the students in the synagogue. Amar, and he said, Imishum Yikra Didi, if it was because of honor due me. Okay, imishum yikra didei, okay, demita, or if it's because of the honor that's due the deceased, atu kuli alma, then many people will come. Reish Lakish safte lahahut surba mirabanan to shachiach ba'ara di Yisrael. Reish Lakish gave a eulogy for a certain student of the rabbis, excuse me, that was frequented from Eretz Yisrael, Dahave Tani Hilchata Bekaf Daled Shurta, that he used to teach, okay, the law in the 24th row. In other words, he was not one of the brilliant students that sat up front. He sat in the back. Amar Vave Chasra Arad Yisrael Gava Rabba. Woe is the land of Israel, for it misses a great person. Okay? Hahuda have tane hilchata. Okay, there was a situation that one taught law, sifra. He taught the sifrei, the sifra, the sifrei, the tosefta, and the tosefta. Ushachiv, and he died. Atu va'amrule the Rabbi Nachman lesafdei mar, and they went and said to Rav Nachman, "Would you please eulogize him?" What was Rav Nachman's response? Amar hechinas padei. How can I eulogize him? I sana demale sifrei dechaser. Am I going to say that he is like a basket, an empty basket empty of holy books? So the Gemara makes a striking comment here. I thought, ta chazi ma bein takife da'ara di Yisrael lechaside de Bavel. See the difference between the harsh ones of the land of Israel and the righteous ones of Babylonia. Okay, the attitude. We could spend the rest of the shiur on this topic, but I won't. But just a striking statement in the attitude that the rabbis had towards colleagues in Israel versus Eretz Yisrael. Okay,
Where was Rav Nachman?
where do you think? Okay, he was in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, Tznan Hatam. Okay, let's try to. All right, Tznan. It was taught there. Ude ishtamesh pataga chalaf. One who uses the crown of the Torah, okay, inappropriately. Tani Reish Lakish Saat, Zeha Mishtamesh B'mi Sheshoneh Halachot. That depends on one who, right, who teaches laws. Kitra Shel Torah, because teaching law is the crown of the Torah. Va'amar Ula, and Ula says, Lishtamesh Inish B'man Detage Arba'a, V'lo Lishtamesh B'man Dematne Arba'a. Okay, a person may use that if he learns at least 4 sections of the Mishnah, but he should not use it when he teaches 4 sections of the Mishnah. Kihad Reish Lakish, like the following incident with Reish Lakish. Hava Azil Ba'orcha, who was going along the road, Mate Urkma Demaya, and he came to a puddle of water. Ata Hahu Gavra, Arkave, Akatve. Along came a person, and he put Reish Lakish and carried him on his shoulders. V'kama avarle, and as he was going through the water, Amarle Karita, Reish Lakish asked him, "Have you learned Bible?" Amarle Karina, I've learned. Tanita, have you learned Mishnah? Tanina Arba'a Sidrei Mishnah. I learned 4 seders of the Mishnah. Amarle, he said to him, Pasalt lach Arba'a Ture. He said, what happens is you've hewn out 4 mountains. In other words, that's good, but it's not good enough, so to speak, right? V'ta'anta bar lakish akatvech, and he told him, so why then are you carrying me on your shoulders? Shade bar lakisha b'maya, throw bar Reish Lakish into the water. Amarle, the guy carrying him, said, Nechali da ashma'in lamar. It's appropriate for me that I learn from the master. Ihachi says that. Gemor mine hai milta. If that's the case, learn from me the following thing. Da Amar Rabbi Zera, as Rabbi Zera says, Benot Yisrael hein ichmiru al atzman. The daughters of Israel made a stringency upon themselves. Sha'afilu ra'ot tipat dam kechadal, that even if they saw a small drop of blood the size of a mustard seed, Yoshavot alav shiva niki'in, they would sit 7 clean days. Tana debei Eliyahu, and it was taught in the academy of Eliyahu, Kol hashoneh halachot muftach lo shehu ben olam haba. Whoever learns or teaches and learns law, it's promised that he will be of the world to come. Shneamar halichot olam lo, al tikra halichot ela halachot. And that's where we'll stop today. Okay? All right. Everybody have a good day. Stay
You too.
well.
Thank you very much.
Okay?
Thank you.
And hopefully we'll see some of you maybe later at 10 o'clock.
All the best. Yes.
Now, you know.